Thursday, September 8th, 2022, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So President Putin has thrown the gauntlet again at our Western currency system, in particular the dollar, but also the euro and the British pound. He trash-talked about these currencies at the Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok, Russia. So recently, or a few months ago in June, there was the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, and President Putin came up with the phrase mythical values. He said that the West creates currencies backed by nothing, basically, out of thin air, in the trillions, and that it's based on mythical values, fiat currency. Isn't the ruble a fiat currency? Well, it has been, I would say, up until recently, but it's moving more and more towards being a hard currency, backed especially by gold and other commodities. But we're also going to look at why, in my opinion, the Russian economy has done so well, despite the fact that the West has thrown everything at it since February and the conflict in the Ukraine. So I've got a CNBC article that is very biased, of course, against President Putin. Am I pro-Putin? No, but I think a lot of the things he says about the Western economy, the currency system, and what's going on in the world economically makes a lot of sense, makes a lot more sense than what our Western leaders are telling us. And just before we go on to the CNBC article, just wanted to read his message to the participants, organizers, and guests of the 7th Eastern Economic Forum to give you an idea of the way President Putin thinks, because we're not going to hear this in the West. He says, Dear friends, I extend my greetings to you as the 7th Eastern Economic Forum gets underway. The forum enjoys a high level of international prestige and significantly contributes to building business ties between Russia and the countries of the Asia-Pacific region. It is instrumental in attracting investment and technological innovations, as well as more fully unlocking the rich economic and social potential of the Russian Far East. The main theme of this year's forum, on the path to a multipolar world, seems particularly relevant and significant. The obsolete unipolar model is being replaced by a new world order based on the fundamental principles of justice and equality, as well as the recognition of the right of each state and people to their own sovereign path of development. Powerful political and economic centers are taking shape right here in the Asia-Pacific region, acting as a driving force in this irreversible process. I'm going to stop at that and jump over to the CNBC article. And the CNBC article says, Putin claims the U.S. wants to preserve global dictatorship and is sacrificing Europe. I kind of agree with that. But what I wanted to touch upon is the de-dollarization part, and the part where he trash-talked not just the dollar, but the euro and the British pound. Western countries, this is what he said, Western countries have undermined the key pillars of the world economic system built over centuries. Quite significant, I would say. And he continues, we have seen the loss in trust in the dollar and the euro and the pound as the currencies in which you can carry out transactions, hold deposits or assets, and that is why step by step we're moving away from the use of these unreliable, compromised currencies, he said. And this is what CNBC is reporting that he also said in his speech at the Eastern Economic Conference. On Tuesday, Putin announced that China will pay for gas from Russia's state-owned Gazprom in both their currencies, the ruble and the Chinese yuan, signaling a further attempt by both countries to sideline the dollar. Yeah, and that's probably going to happen as well with Saudi Arabia. We know that last year in August, Russia and Saudi Arabia signed a security cooperation agreement. And we know that actually the Saudis apparently have been buying oil from the Russians to sell it at a higher price in the West. So I bet they're going to start dealing in their own currencies, the Saudi rial and the Russian ruble as well. And yes, so he trash talked the dollar, the euro, and the British pound. But we're also noticing that the yen, of course, is losing value at a rate of knots against the dollar, against gold. Against gold, we are almost at an all-time high of 250,000 yen. We're seeing the Korean won, and South Korea, of course, is closely allied to the West. That's falling out of bed as well. But I just wanted to show you some very, long-term charts of the Japanese yen, the euro, and the British pound against the ruble. So here's the Japanese yen versus the ruble. You can see how it's falling out of bed, of course, and we've broken through a very long-term trend line here. The same thing goes for the British pound, and the same thing goes for the euro. And I spoke earlier about why I think the Russian economy is holding up so well, and I actually think it's going to do very well in the future too. And one of the major reasons is this here. If you go onto the US debt clock and you go to world debt clock, you will see that the Russian national debt, or the public debt to GDP ratio, is only 18%. That's like unheard of in the West, that kind of debt level. I mean, the US is like 130% and probably maybe more because of the way they calculate GDP. The UK, the same, over 100%. You look at Japan, 288%. Is it any wonder the yen is falling out of bed? You look at France, 130%. Italy, 176%. Even China is not that great. It's 62%, but a lot better than what we have in the West. So the other thing I would say, and a lot of people denigrated the Russian economy early on this year when the conflict started. They said it was just a gas station, but I think there's more to it than just being a gas station. And we're told, of course, that he's a dictator, that the people in Russia are unhappy. But look at their tax regime. So you can get this online. So Russia introduced a new income tax levy on Russians' earnings more than 5 million rubles, or $67,000 a year, at the start of 2021 in a dramatic overhaul to its old so-called flat tax system. Under the new approach, all earnings over that threshold are taxed at a 15% rate. But below 67,000, everything is taxed at 13% rate. So can you imagine making $1 million and only being taxed 15%? Unlike in the West, here in the UK, if you earn $1 million, for example, not that I do, they probably take 50% of your earnings, and the same thing goes for Western Europe and the US. One interesting thing about the Russian tax regime as well is that the oil companies and I guess the energy companies are taxed quite heavily, and maybe that's why Western business people are so unhappy with Russia. It says here, in 2006, the tax burden on oil companies exceeded 45% of net sales, compared to 12% in construction and 16.5% in telecommunications. So, yeah, it looks like the Russians, or under President Putin, or under the Russian government, they're trying to basically make sure that the wealth of the country, the physical wealth, is not just benefiting the private companies or even state-owned companies, but also the general public. It seems pretty fair, I would say. So I wanted to show you that as well, about the Russian economy, why I think it's doing well. Well, unlike us in the West, it has very little levels of debt, and it's rich in natural resources, and it's allowing the general public to, well, it's incentivizing them to work and create wealth by taxing them at a very low level. And the tax code seems to be relatively simple in Russia. Maybe in Russia it's a little better. I don't know. Maybe if you know about Russian, the tax system and accountancy, you can comment. To me, it seems like it's a little more simple over there. And it's ironic that, yeah, we're told here in the West, maybe that's why they've blocked people from using RT. I know you can get a VPN and get onto RT, but we're not listening to this. We're not hearing all this in the West. It was the West that blocked RT, and after that, of course, Russia blocked the BBC because they weren't going to block the BBC. But anyway, yes, it continues. And again, what is the consequence of the dollarization? Well, it means that foreigners, especially countries outside the G7 and the NATO countries, so to speak, they're not going to need dollars anymore. That means less demand for dollars. That means higher interest rates, because a lot of these global south countries, so to speak, they won't have to save as much in dollars, or have reserves in dollars. So they're not going to be buying bonds, treasuries. They're not going to be buying gilts. They're not going to be buying European Eurozone government bonds. So, and that's just going to be very inflationary. And to think that we can just create currency out of thin air like we're doing now, and everything will be okay, think again. So there you go. Things are moving very quickly. And with that, we're going to look at the markets this morning. It's 8:23 a.m. London time. We got spot gold at 17.1860. It's virtually unchanged. It's been as high as 17.23 and as low as 17.13. Silver is up 6 cents at 18.50. It's been as high as 18.63 and as low as 18.38. Dow futures is down 40 points. NASDAQ 100 futures is down 5, and the S&P is down about 3.5. So not much to write home about there. FTSE is up 5, and the Euro Stoxx 50 is up 11. To the mythical Western currencies and others, of course, sterling is down 1/3%, just below 115. Yesterday we made I think it was a 37-year low, just above 114. The key level below is going to be, I think the 1985 low was 103.45. So £1 back then bought $1.03. So we're very close to getting there. Of course, these markets don't move down in a straight line, even though the pound seems to be doing a pretty good job of it, I would say. The euro is down 0.2%, just below par at 99.88. The dollar's come off against the yen a little bit. The dollar was up at 145 versus the yen yesterday. Right now, it's unchanged at 143.82. Dollar's unchanged versus the Swiss franc, 97.55. And the dollar is up slightly versus the yuan at 696.80. Let's check the Dollar ruble. Well, we're trading at 61, so very steady, the ruble. Back to the other currencies. Aussie dollar is down almost 0.4% at 67.43. Dollar's unchanged versus the Canadian dollar, 131.23. And the Kiwi dollar is down 0.5% at 60.50. To the general commodities, WTI crude is up just under 1%, 82.50. So yeah, we've seen a pretty big move lower in oil. A lot of volatility still. Brent crude is up 0.75% at 88.50. High grade copper is up just over 1% at 347, and US nat gas is unchanged at 786. Let's check the Dutch TTF nat gas futures. Well, that's down 3%, trading just above 200. So yes, the price of gas has come off from almost 300 at the beginning of the week, but that's no consolation, because if we're not going to get any gas, does it matter that the price is down so much? And I've noticed as well that electricity prices and other prices are still going up quite steeply in Europe. So with that, let's finish off and look at the bond markets, look at the treasury market. I noticed rates fell off a little bit yesterday, so that gave the stock market a bit of relief in the US. Right now, the 2-year yield is down another basis point at 343, and the 10-year is down 2 basis points at 325. Let's quickly check the UK government bond market, the gilts. Yeah, the gilts have gilt yields have come off as well, which is a bit of a relief. The 2-year is now back below 3 at 297. It's down about 3 basis points. And the 10-year is down, well, actually unchanged, just above 3% at 303. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Please share it far and wide. Think about subscribing to this channel as well if you haven't yet. And with that, I wish you all a great rest of the day. Take care. Bye.